Are you an Onesiphorus? Hey friends, it's Pastor Mike from Fellowship Church. Always love to connect with you midweek. Hope you're having a wonderful week. Know that we love you and pray for you. That question for you again, are you an Onesiphorus? Now, if I say the word Paul to you, that name is probably pretty familiar to you. If you've read your Bible, you know that a man named Paul, who had a very dramatic conversion of the Christian faith, ended up writing about half of the New Testament. His letters are well referenced by people from all time in Christian faith. Paul is a really well-known guy and must have had an incredibly strong personality. The Spirit was certainly working in him. But if you've read some of the letters of Paul from the New Testament of your Bible, you know that Paul also had a pretty rough life. He suffered a lot of physical pain because of his call to ministry. He certainly had moments of discouragement, almost to the point of being despondent. I'm sure there were a lot of times in his life when he wanted to just flat out give up. Well, friends, if you've ever read one of Paul's letters to the man named Timothy, Timothy was a young protege. Paul was his mentor. Timothy was pastoring a church, and at the end of his life, we believe, Paul wrote a letter entitled 2 Timothy, meaning it was the second letter he wrote to Timothy. And in the course of that letter, fairly early in the letter, Paul says, please show some kind of favor to the man named Onesiphorus, there's that name again, because he refreshed me. Friends, that means that there was a time when Paul was in a pretty tough spot, maybe considering giving up, not just ministry, but maybe even on life itself. Paul was in a terrible place. Prison, was probably in want for a lot of things, and was thinking that there was nothing left for him in his life. And then a man named Onesiphorus showed up. What a great name. I wish somebody in my church family would name their little boy Onesiphorus. I'll pay you $20 if you do. A man named Onesiphorus showed up. And by the way, Onesiphorus didn't live in the town in which Paul was imprisoned. Onesiphorus, we think, lived hundreds of miles away. He showed up where Paul was, in prison. I don't know what he did. Maybe brought him lunch. Maybe brought him some clothes. Maybe some kind of sustenance. Maybe he just sat with Paul for a while and talked with him so that Paul didn't feel alone. Oh, by the way, that word refreshed, that's literally the word in their language for revive, like the word they would have used to describe someone performing CPR on another person. By the way, CPR didn't exist in those days, but for them, to revive someone was literally to breathe life back into them. That's what refreshing meant. So when Onesiphorus showed up for Paul in prison and refreshed Paul, Paul could say later on, hey, he brought life back to me. It's a beautiful story. I love the idea of Onesiphorus, but here's a thought for you. Do you know anybody in your family, your circle of acquaintances, maybe even somebody you don't know but you've heard of, who could just use a little bit of refreshing today? And again, I don't think Onesiphorus had any kind of a PhD in refreshment. I think he just showed up and attended to some of Paul's needs. He couldn't fix everything. He couldn't break Paul out of prison. He couldn't change the course of Paul's life, but he could say, Paul, you're not going to do this alone, and I'm here just to be with you for a while today. I wonder if there's somebody in your life who just needs to be refreshed or maybe even revived, because friends, you and I can carry on the tradition of Onesiphorus. By the way, he was made a saint by the Catholic Church years ago. You and I can carry on the tradition of Onesiphorus just by showing up. I don't have the idea that Onesiphorus camped out and spent the rest of his days with Paul. At some point in time, he must have gone home. But he must have also looked at Paul and said, I can't do everything, but I can do something. And friends, you have that same ability. You have the spirit of Onesiphorus inside of you. We call it the Spirit of Jesus. And Jesus calls you and I to seek out people who need to be refreshed and revived and just minister to them. I wonder who the Paul is in your life, and I wonder to whom you can be an Onesiphorus this week. I can't wait to hear your stories. If you're having a wonderful week, know that we love you and pray for you. Know that you have the spirit of an Onesiphorus inside of you. What will you do with it this week? Take care. God bless. Have a great week. Bye-bye.